Just a quick viewer discretion, this is part 3 of a 3-part series I'm doing on Jak and Daxter. If you haven't already seen part 1 and part 2, go ahead and click on the cards up there to start watching part 1, and also the playlist will be on my channel. Let's get into part 3. Jak 3 releasing only 1 year and 1 month after the release of Jak 2, the game that will go on to revolutionize basically everything in the Jak and Daxter franchise, from its cities, its locations, combat, story, traversal, character interactions, etc. The question that was put to Jak 3 was, how can they maintain this momentum? Where do you go from here? How do you improve upon a game that improved the franchise so drastically already? What possible room for improvements were needed to once again take this franchise and
go even further beyond?
Well, Naughty Dog did what they do best, and they took what came before it and elevated the franchise even further. Each installment working on enhancing the foundations of the games that came before it, forever expanding the lore, the characters, the gameplay mechanics, the controls, abilities, weapons to create a cohesive and perfect trilogy spanning over the last 3-year period. Now, a lot has been accomplished across the Jak and Daxter franchise. However, did Jak 3 perfect the trilogy? Let's find out. Now, in the previous video, I mentioned one of the biggest changes to Jak 2 was its introductions of guns. So how does Jak 3 change this mechanic even further? Well, Naughty Dog looked at the 4 guns given to you in Jak 2 and said, this game gives you a total of 12 guns over the original 4 that were in Jak 2. They go ahead and give you the original 4, and then they give you 2 additional guns per 4 mods. I mean, look at how many guns you are given throughout the space of this game. Some of the additional gun slots just enhance the gun that came before it, others change the gun entirely. It meant that you now had an astonishing level of choice and variety in the gunplay. More choice to the player is always better in my books, and it allowed for more freedom to choose to play how you want, to pick the guns or the lineage of guns that best suit your playstyle, and this is only adding to the extra variety in the game's combat. Now, one of the downsides of giving players this many guns is that it can become pretty overpowered, especially when you start pairing up and combining AoE guns and also guns that ricochet bullets and attack all the enemies around you. It just made it very hard for enemies to actually get near you to pose any kind of real threat. This means that any kind of difficulty spikes or difficulty scaling were quickly reduced, and the game was a lot easier than what Jak 2 was. Now, continuing on with the combat, Jak 2 gave us a contrasting mechanic to the regular Jak in the form of Dark Jak. That incredibly strong, monstrous, and aggressive darkness that Jak had unlocked that could deal devastating blows. But how did Jak 3 improve on this? Well, Jak 3 was given light powers, otherwise known as Light Jak. It was a gift from the precursors, and Jak was given these light powers to balance out the darkness within him, and with these new abilities came even more mechanics that the player could take advantage of. Dark Jak was seen as more of a destructive suite of moves and abilities, so conversely, Light Jak was seen as more of a restorative feature to the game. You could slow down time, he could fly, he could even self-heal and create a light shield around him. So for those of you playing at home, let's do a quick recap as to the abilities and options available to you in a combat setting now with the introduction of Jak 3. So you still have the same physical, simple combat found in Jak 1, you have the guns from Jak 2, and also Dark Jak that was introduced in Jak 2, as well as each of those guns introduced in Jak 2 now having more slots, so you're going from 4 guns up to 12 guns, and then on top of that you now have the alter ego to Dark Jak in the form of Light Jak. Looking back at Jak 1 and seeing what you started with versus what is available to you in Jak 3 is nothing short of amazing. There is so much choice and availability for a player to play how they want in the style that they want in these games. It really just shows that the scaling and leveling and improvements across the entire franchise.
But wait! Protège-moi!
Jak 3 also perfected vehicles and racing. In Jak 2, there were a few racing sequences and plenty of vehicles around Haven City. It was clear that Naughty Dog had an affinity to vehicles and racing to a degree and were passionate enough to inject some of that into Jak 2, but Jak 3, oh my god, Jak 3 gave us buggies. Now these buggies were rugged vehicles that you would use to traverse large distances within the wasteland. More on the wasteland in a minute. However, these buggies had their own weaponry and all of the buggies had their own unique individual stats when it came to speed, durability, and jump heights. Now some were super heavy, so they were really slow. They had limited jump heights, yet they were super sturdy and had super high defense stats. They were basically tanks. Others were more agile, they were lighter, quicker, with faster speeds and huge jump heights, but the trade-off was that you were so much more vulnerable to attacks. Now throughout the game, Jak unlocks around 8 of these buggies and you get to pick which one you want to take out whenever you enter the wastelands. Now control stats aside, each vehicle had its own style of weaponry as well, just adding to the game's feature of giving you the player as many options as possible across all of its facets. Some buggies had machine guns, others had grenade launchers, others had dual submachine guns, and some don't even have weapons at all. It was up to you to look at the mission and assess at every single time you went out which buggy would be most suitable for your needs, as well as which buggy personally favors your playstyle. It made me feel so much more involved in the game, and if I died, I knew it could be either because the vehicle I picked was unsuitable for the mission at hand, or the selected vehicle just didn't fit with me personally. And the racing and the buggies were so praised, in fact, that it actually spawned off a completely dedicated racing game called Jak X. Now let's get into the locations you'll be visiting in this game. A lot of them return from Jak 2. Now I think it could be one of two mindsets here. Either one, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, or two, they just wanted to reuse the similar locations because they already had all the assets and allowing them to push out this game in such a quick time frame. It would explain how they were able to push out an entire sequel in just 1 year and 1 month after Jak 2's release. Reusing older locations seen in Jak 2 did allow them to completely focus on the newer locations like the Wastelands or even Spargus, both of which offer up a wealth and variety of both visual interest, introductions to interesting characters, and both play a large role in progressing the overarching story forward. Now speaking of story, does this story of Jak 3 tie up the trilogy very neatly? No, it doesn't. Unfortunately, this is probably one of the weakest parts of this game, and unfortunately, spoilers ahead, is the reason why I don't think that Jak 3 perfects the Jak and Daxter trilogy. Now coming off Jak 2's story where it was super complex but executed perfectly with the time travel, the time loops, and those revelations that you would see as you play, by comparison, Jak 3's story is a lot more simplistic, however the execution is very messy. Here's what I mean. Jak has been exiled from Haven City and banished to the Wasteland. Now at the end of Jak 2, Jak is seen as the hero of the city. He saved the city, he saved the world, and he's deemed as the heir to the city. Most people can agree that he was a hero, but in this game, for some reason, he's banished to the Wastelands from his actions in Jak 2. How does that make sense? Vega, who is a new character that's introduced in this game, who is kind of like a high councilman or a politician type in Haven City, personally saw to Jak's exile from Haven City for his quote-unquote heinous crimes, despite all the good that he did in Jak 2, and it was later found out that Vega had a prejudice to Jak's dark eco ability, even referring to him as a dark eco freak.
Are you sure you want this dark eco freak contaminating the hallowed halls of our glorious precursors?
Now in my mind, if someone as important as Vega has such a big power and presence in the Jak and Daxter world, surely he would be mentioned or at least hinted to in the second Jak game, right? No, this character is completely shoehorned into this game as a means to get Jack out into the wastelands. It is a shocking way, an absolute horrible way to get Jack to where you want him to be in the story. There was just no thinking behind this. It was a massive loophole. Now, we'll be discussing Vega more later in the video, but his introduction was just weak. Anyways, Jack, Daxter, and P.E.K.K.A. are exiled to the desert or the wastelands, where desert dwellers pick them up and take them to a new location called Spargus. Now, Jack then meets the king of Spargus, Damas, and you'll find out that he has kind of a relation to Jack later on in the game. But Damas does say that because we saved you from dying in the wasteland, your life now belongs to us. So Jack goes out and does all these missions for Spargus, trying to prove himself, trying to work off the debt of the life that is now owed to the Wastelands or King Spargus himself. Now this is where it gets really dumb. So Errol returns from Jack 2 and he is, I could not stand him in Jack 2. He was the biggest prick. I could not stand him at all. But he's returning in Jack 3, but he's not the same Errol. He's Metal Errol. He's Errol, Cyber Errol, made completely of metal. And his personality is just as shitty as Jack 2, but just on steroids. He's hellbent at getting rid of all of Light Eco, and he's hellbent at besting Jack again, and he's also obsessed with destroying the world to, I don't know, possibly prove to himself that he's capable. Now this really made no sense to me because he's not that compelling of a character in Jack 2, not that likable, and then you bring him into this game where he's obsessed with taking down Jack and destroying the world, and I'm thinking, buddy, who are you proving yourself to if you go ahead and destroy the world? Everyone that would recognize that you did that would be fucking dead. What are you thinking?
I found some new friends to help me conquer this puny little planet.
You're talking to the Dark Makers.
It seems my digital self can communicate with these poor, tortured minds quite well. Oh, they're just like you and me, Jack. Well, me at least. They want a home, someone to call a friend. Destruction of all Light Ego. They volunteered to help me put this puny planet out of its misery.
But then you find out he's working with the Dark Makers. Who are the Dark Makers? Well, they're precursors who have been influenced and corrupted by Dark Ego.
The Dark Makers were once precursors, but their exposure to Dark Ego changed them. They began twisting worlds, conquering life, and dark ages ensued. Now the Dark Ones have found your world and are coming to claim it for themselves.
Pretty cool, right? These precursors who have been talked about across the 3 games, these godlike beings, they're corrupted. You would have thought that maybe these Dark Makers would have been mentioned in either of the 2 games as a possibility for precursors to go to the dark side, right? No, they've never been introduced at all. Anyway, it's been revealed that this purple star in the sky is actually the Dark Maker's spaceship, and they essentially want to also destroy the world or terraform it. Again, it's just another world-ending threat. It's just really not that interesting at all. These faceless monsters destroying the planet. It's such a weak story, especially compared to what we got in the previous Jack game. Now, we do have a couple of battles with Cyber Errol, and after a few battles, Jack eventually does kill him, and we go ahead and we kill the spaceship that's holding the Dark Makers on there as well. Now, Jack and Daxter eventually trigger a planetary defense system, the Dark Maker ship is yeeted, and all is well. Now, because Jack was such a hero, proving himself again, saving the world again, he was offered the powers of a precursor. Pretty big deal, right? That's huge. When he was offered the power of the precursors, Vega, that high-ranking councilman that we talked about before, jumped into the light to steal the power of the precursor from Jack. But what happened? Did he turn into this godlike precursor? No, he turned into a fucking Otzel.
Proven your worth, warrior. We grant you the gift of evolution. The honor of becoming one of us.
Step aside! I will be the one who evolves into a precursor. The right is mine!
Be careful what you wish for.
It is done.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
These creatures are the great precursors? And I wanted to evolve into the... No!
A little drafty, isn't it?
It is then revealed that the precursors for the entire run of this game have always been Otzels. What the fuck?
We are unhappy with your performance. If you had been a true hero, you would have stopped Errol by now.
Oh my god.
Yes, well, now we are even more angry, and we order you to avert your eyes, or we will,
Oh, bother.
They look like me. Not what you expected.
Yeah, get that a lot.
Don't look so upset. If you knew we precursors were a bunch of little fuzzy rats, would you worship us? Could we run the universe?
Not possible, buddy.
This absolutely infuriated me when I found this out in this game. This whole thing of precursors being these godlike creatures, just far beyond any of our comprehension. We're just Otzels talking themselves up. It's this whole Wizard of Oz thing, like, you know, pull behind the blinds and they just end up being some fucking Otzel. It was so dumb and completely ruined the image that was being built up for these precursors, and it really just showed that this game had been rushed out and they couldn't commit to a really good storyline, so they just went with a gag storyline. And also on top of that, had Jack actually gone into the light, he would have been turned into an Otzel. What kind of ending are we talking about here, guys? The story was fun to play through, and you do learn a lot about Jack's father and also Ma, who was the creator and founder of Haven City. It also led to many fans to speculate who Ma really is, with some speculating that Jack himself is the younger version of Ma. However, as there is no Jack 4, that story was never expanded on. Now, some do say that he is a descendant of Ma. Others say that because some characters in the game call him Jack the Ma, he must be Ma himself.
That you can call me by my first name, by what my father called me, Mar.
Wait, Jack is Mar? The Mar?
Now, I think this story didn't really resonate with me too much, or at least not as much as number 2 did, because planet-destroying aliens really aren't that interesting. Time travel in Jack 2 blew my mind, and I feel like if there was a Jack 4, they could really delve into the origins and adventures of Jack and his relation to Ma, which was raised in Jack 3, but this was all left open. A lot of questions raised in Jack 3 were left unanswered, and any setup was never paid off, which I feel may have dampened my experience with the game overall. So did Jack 3 perfect the trilogy? Unfortunately, with all of its additions and building upon the previous 2 games with all its different abilities and mechanics, I'd have to say that it didn't perfect the trilogy. I'd even go as far as to say that it actually left it in a worse off position from where Jack 2 elevated the franchise to. The scope of the franchise, with the introduction of the revolutionary gameplay and innovative technology in Jak and Daxter 1, to the drastic pivot in the more mature, feral and grounded take in Jak 2, to the many additions in Jak 3, Naughty Dog were able to accomplish something truly amazing. They made one of the most impactful, significant and timeless tales to ever grace the PlayStation 2. We grew up with Jack and we changed alongside him. However, the rushed, nonsensical storytelling of Jak 3, along with important characters that were apparently not important enough to ever mention in previous games beforehand, left Jak 3 feeling overly rushed and just inferior to Jak 2. And the feeling of being rushed is justified, especially as I said before, this game released only 1 year and 1 month after the release of Jak 2. That turnaround time is absolutely insane, and something had to be compromised. Unfortunately, in this case, it was the story. Now, the Jak and Daxter franchise is not perfect by any means, but I hope that this little 3-part series showed you just how and why these games were so special to me, and why they held such a significance to millions of players across the globe. But guys, that is the end of the video and the series. Let me know in the comments down below, what is your favorite Jak game out of the trilogy or even the offshoots? If you liked the video, please go ahead, leave it a like, subscribe to the channel, and also let me know in the comments down below what other game series you want me to look at next. If you like the entire series, please go ahead and share it with someone, as it definitely helps out the channel and the algorithm. But take care, stay safe out there guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.
My life's work, it turns out, was spent searching for a bunch of furballs.